Hey everyone, Joe here, and in this episode, Frank, Scott, and I had the privilege of chatting with Derek Crowder, the Command Chief Master Sergeant of the 60th Air Mobility Wing in Travis Air Force Base, California. We had the honor of listening to his story and had the opportunity to glean some wisdom from his amazing perspectives. Enjoy.
Life, learning, leadership, the Llama Lounge.
Yo, welcome to the Llama Lounge, a dialogue on life, learning, and leadership. This is Joe, and I have with me most of the Llama team, Scott and Frank. What's going on, guys?
Hey Joe, how's it going, bud?
Good. So how's it? And how you guys hanging in there on day 47-ish of the quarantine, whatever day it is now?
Just waiting for the barbershops to open.
They're opening in Atlanta, aren't they? I thought I saw something about in Atlanta. They're opening up.
That'll be an expensive haircut then if I have to go to Atlanta.
The lines to get a haircut at Osan have been insane. Like the first 2 or 3 days was just lines out the door.
Oh,
and
man.
So I had some kind of half-ass clippers that I've kind of dying out on me, and they weren't working. And man, I went home, I cleaned those things out, oiled them up, and I'm like, I'm just shaving it off.
Yeah, you look great, bro.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, I actually really miss the barbers at Osan, man. That was some good stuff over there. And they had a bunch of them going, so you didn't have to wait in line. Well, normally you wouldn't. Of course, now we do. But cool, good stuff. So, hey, today we have a very special guest on the podcast with us, Derek Crowder. Derek, what's going on, brother?
Not much. Everybody doing okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So, yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on. For our listeners out there, Derek is the Command Chief Master Sergeant and my Command Chief at the 60th Air Mobility Wing, Travis Air Force Base, California. And the short time I've worked with them has been a great teammate and a great mentor for me. I really appreciate all our discussions, Derek.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure getting to chat with you. And now we've got 2 additional ones I get to chat with, so that's awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome.
It'll be good.
Man, so it's funny. I was sitting there. We're kind of talking about how our lives are a little bit different right now. I woke up this morning. I looked at my phone, and I had a text thread that probably most of us do. Right? I have a bunch of the guys in my family were on a similar thread, a shared thread, and we're talking to each other. And they were talking about something about their wives and what reality TV shows they're watching. But then I got caught in an Amazon rabbit hole, and I'm looking for stuff, right? And I find I'm looking for a Damascus steel chef knife. So then I asked the guys, I'm like, hey, you guys, any of you guys got a Damascus steel chef knife? And they're like, no, how is it? And I was like, I don't know. I was just asking you guys. So then we're all sharing, like we're all in this rabbit hole together, sharing. And I'm like, what has happened to us, man? Is it the quarantine or are we just getting old?
Your priorities change.
Yeah, I think so, right? I was like, what are we doing? And I'm thinking that, y'all probably experiencing things a little bit different. So I was thinking like, hey, Derek, what are the big changes that have kind of shifted in your life since this thing's all started?
So I would say the biggest change is I'm normally not a runner. And so with the gym being closed on base, I have found myself running 5 or 6 days a week. And your posts are always motivational for me. I don't know about everybody else, but motivational in the mileage, not the time. I'm never going to get that. I run a mile in like 6 minutes and then continues for 9 more. But, so that's probably one of the things. And honestly, one of the biggest changes is having to do stuff like this, right? Where it's for meetings and things like that during the day. That's been a culture shift for us where often we're used to meeting in person, and now you don't have those opportunities to do it. And so you're still getting after a lot of the things in your life, but you're just doing it via different methods. And so we'll see what happens after all this is over, what changes there are in my life, as well as, the bigger Air Force world as well. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. I know that a lot of things have changed for me. And one of the cool things that I keep talking about is I'm actually stretching myself quite a bit on some of the information technology, right? Like all the tools that we have that we've had a lot of these for a long time, but I know I haven't. And Scott, like you're talking about, because he's in a professional development profession right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are stretching quite a bit too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have resources that we've had available to us, because like we have training partnerships with DDI and Franklin Covey, and so they've been offering virtual courses for years. But it's something that we haven't used too much, just because our clients want face-to-face and in person. So now it's something that they're asking more for, now that this thing's getting pushed out a little bit. So I've honestly, in my job the past few weeks, I've been doing a lot of research on, all right, how do we make these virtual classes work? How do we register, our participants for them? So it's a lot of learning going on.
Yeah, for sure. And Z, like, so you said that the barber's open, because before you guys were like complete lockdown for a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, we were on complete lockdown for probably 3 or 4 days. Yeah, everything was shut down.
Right. And before that, though, you guys had your fitness center open. And
the fitness center has stayed open the whole entire time on Osan Air Base.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, and every time there's like an entry control point. You got to check in, you got to check out, right? And so that's how they control if there happens to be someone that had a positive case or something. That's how they do their scanning and make sure that they know who was there at the time. Right. But I make sure I thank those FSS folks every time I go in and out. I'm like, man, this service right here on base is one of the most important activities that we have, and that's keeping our airmen fit. So grateful.
Right, for sure. Yeah, because what happens, like, that physical fitness absolutely ties to our mental fitness. And I kind of wonder, what's going on that we might not be tracking because we don't see our people as much.
Yeah.
I was just getting ready to say that. You don't realize how much you rely on a workout at the fitness center until you don't have that opportunity.
Right.
And then if you don't continue to do something, it starts to weigh on your mental fitness as well. It's a challenge.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like, it could become demoralizing in so many other facets of like what you have going on when your fitness starts to drop, and then, quite a bit of stuff that can happen, second, third order effects. So, Derek, we always like to do this with our guests. We're going to put you on the spot because I know as humble as you are, you probably don't like talking about yourself very much, but for us, we're selfish and we want to hear about you a little bit. We want to hear your story, and I think our listeners could get something. So really, we just kind of want to know, like, your story, how you got to where you're at, like, how you grew up, your family life, or where you're from, just some of those things. Because I think we often glean a little bit of wisdom coming from people's stories, and kind of also can relate to them a little bit too.
Okay. So I'll go all the way back to childhood, if you will, but not too far in childhood. Awesome. So I'm born and raised in a small farming community in Illinois. And so I'll be honest, the Air Force was my second choice of service. And so I was 17 years old. And I went to the Marine recruiter, did all the physical fitness stuff, right? My minimum 3 pull-ups, because I think that's all I could do at the time, but that was the minimum. Ran, did whatever else you had to do, and went home, and I slid the paperwork in front of my dad and said, Dad, I'm going to be a Marine. Sign this form. And he looked at me and he said, no, you're not. I'm not signing that form. And so, because, at 17, you have to have parental consent. That's right. So he was in the Army and during the time of Vietnam. And so he said you could join the Navy or the Air Force. And so I thought, okay, let me go check out this Air Force thing. And I was probably the easiest Air Force recruit there was, because this was 1994. And you guys, if you've been in around that time, you'll probably remember this poster, but it was a security police, right? At that time you had SP and LE. It was security police standing in front of a B-52 with an M16, and it was a poster on the recruiter's wall. And I walked in and I pointed to that and I said, that's what I want to do for the Air Force. If I'm going to join the Air Force, I'm going to carry a gun. And so I guaranteed security forces, right, or security police at the time, came in, and in basic training, whenever you go to the firing range, we spent the day on the firing range. We come back. My MTI pulls me in and says, Trainee Crowder, you will never carry a gun for our Air Force. What do you mean? They said, you shot an 11 and you needed a 14 to qualify to be security police. And so they gave me a list of 3 jobs, right? And those 3 jobs, 2 of them are now combined, right? One was personnel, the other one was services, and then the third one was material management. And so as I read all the descriptions, the one that I thought would get me closest to carrying a gun every day was material management, based on how it was worded, right? And so I picked that job, and then that was 26 years ago, and I spent, I've been in supply for many years, and then now command chief. But that's kind of how I started my Air Force journey, as my second choice in my second job. But, I tell people all the time is things happen for a reason. And I don't know if I came in security police or if I came in as a Marine, I don't know that I would still be doing what I'm doing today. So it's been a blessing in disguise, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that a lot of us kind of have a lot of those times in our lives where like wonder what would have happened before. But when we focus on what we've actually chosen to do and all the blessings that come with it, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for my first assignment, I said I wanted to go anywhere east of the Mississippi River. And so they sent me to Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico. not the smartest one, but I know that the Mississippi River is anywhere near New Mexico.
Right. I have a similar story. I said I wanted to stay anywhere on the West Coast from Tacoma, Washington. They sent me to Robbins in Georgia. And I was like, okay.
It's not a bad spot, though.
It's not terrible.
They got the masters there.
Well, I don't think there's any bad assignment, really. I mean, it's and it's cliche to say this, you make everything what you want, but
so you got some rebuttal to that one.
When I was stationed at Wright Pat, they had an assignment open up to Massawa, and I have a small career field, and I had no idea where Massawa was. I never even heard of Massawa, but I was at Wright Pat for about a year and a half, and everyone in my department had been at Massawa for like 15, 16 years. And so when they said, hey, does anybody want to go to Massawa? My hand shot up and I said, where is it? I'll go. And, you just take those chances, and Massawa was a great assignment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there. Yeah.
Hey, Derek, quick question for you.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about your experiences, and I know you did some time in PME. Can you talk about how Airman Leadership School shaped your perspective or leadership philosophy?
Yeah, so I was a ALS instructor for 4.5 years, and I ended up, before I PCS'd, I was the commandant. I did that for about a year. I had the opportunity to do that. And, I'll give you, since we're just chit-chatting, I'll give you kind of the story of how that came about. I went to Airman Leadership School at Eielson, and then a job about a year and a half later opened up, and I was still at Eielson, and it was at that school. And I thought, oh, this would be awesome. Go teach at the school that, you learn so much from as a supervisor. And so I applied for that position, and I went through a couple interviews, and then the flight chief, commandant, we called them flight chiefs during that time, but the flight chief calls me back up to her office, and she says, hey, you've got a great record. You've got you got a great record, and you went to this school and you had great interviews. And she said, but I'm not going to hire you. And I said, do you mind if I ask why? And she said, well, honestly, all those things aside, you look terrible in uniform.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, wow, all right. And I'll be honest with you, it was the right thing for her to say to me. We always talk about, tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear. And that was what I needed to hear at that time. I'd been in Alaska for three years, and it's an excuse. That's all it is. It's gained quite a bit of weight. Wasn't doing much physical activity in the wintertime, wasn't doing much in the summertime except fishing. Right.
Easy to do in Alaska, right?
Yeah, it is.
Easy to gain weight up there. Yeah.
Our first kid was born, right? So I was spending a lot of time indoors with my family, right? And so I went back to work, and my boss, the master sergeant at the time, could tell that something was really bothering me. And so he said, how'd it go? And I said, well, I didn't get the job. And so I was going into the story, and he said, well, if you want that job, you got to work for it. And I said, okay. He said, I'll see you at the gym on Monday at 5 a.m.
There you go.
And for 9 months, 9 months, he met me at the gym at 5 a.m. Never missed. Right. I did occasionally. Right. And he would come knock on my door, right, in housing. And if I didn't show up, because he knew that I wanted that job and I was just making an excuse to not go to the gym. And so he worked for me, he worked out with me for 9 months. And then another job came open and I applied and I got the opportunity to go teach there. And so I shared that because that's really the individual that shaped me as a leader. And the irony to that story is the commandant had swapped out in those 9 months, right? Or around that same time, about the 9-month mark. And it's funny because the person who was working out with me every morning at 5 a.m. was the new commandant. And so it worked out in a sense, but, and it wasn't that he hired me because he knew me, but I will tell you, he probably hired me. And I know he hired me because he knew what my work ethic was at that time. Yeah. Because when he said, hey, if you want this job, you got to work for it. And so that really shaped who I was as a leader in a sense and that kind of goes to a philosophy that I have, and that's the commitment, right? Commitment's one of the things that I talk about in my leadership philosophy, and committed. And he was committed to me. I was committed to the job. And so that kind of shaped who I was as a supervisor moving forward, because he didn't have to get up at 5 a.m. He lived off base, right? He lived in North Pole, Alaska, about 15 or 20 minute drive to work every day. And if we're meeting at 5, you can do the math on what time he's getting up in the morning to get to the gym by 5 a.m. And so that level of commitment that he displayed to me, I always said, I'm going to give that same level of commitment to the folks that work for me as well. And so that really shaped who I was, right? Every single day working with that individual for a couple of years. So it was a good experience.
That's a great story.
Hey, and especially with those sub-zero temperatures, getting up that early and to meet somebody at the gym and stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
because you got to let your truck run for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, especially if you didn't have a block battery in there.
Can we
absolutely
cue the Rocky scene where he's carrying like the log on his back?
That's a commitment. And then also the fact that person that embodied such a great, character got to be the commandant too. I mean, that's that's the kind of people that we want, teaching our folks how to be good.
Yeah, it was great. It really was. I like to share the story because I think that really tells you what somebody can do for you as a supervisor.
Well, and I tell you what, that it also kind of reminds you of the importance of actually joining the service. Is there's a commitment, expectation from the service member. And I know I've been retired for about 5 years now, but I know when I was at Scott and I was the career assistance advisor there, and we'd have all these airmen and a lot of young ones coming in expecting a whole lot. They wanted so much and they hadn't really had a chance to commit to anything yet. And there were some that were frustrated that they didn't get BTZ right off the bat, or they didn't, I was supposed to come in with 2 stripes. I only came in with 1. And when I came in, there wasn't those giveaways as far as, negotiating with the recruiters on, what stripe you came in with. You came in as an airman basic. And so it's one of those things where I think it's important to remind people that you need to commit yourself to the enterprise, to the company, to the organization. Right. If you expect the company, enterprise, organization to commit to you, and it's got to be, you got to meet them halfway.
I mean, that's a great point, because I think a lot of people will hear that story, and depending on what lens they're listening to, they're like, how come my supervisor doesn't do that for me? And won't even listen to the part where the commitment that Derek had to have to also meet that person halfway, right? They're not even focusing on that. Some people might be looking at it like that. And I think that a lot of times we feel entitled, like I'm entitled to have a great supervisor 100% of the time, which none of us, probably are blessed with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that brings up a point though, is like, when you commit yourself to someone like that, right, from the supervisor's hat, and that person isn't willing to give the same amount of commitment, how does that change your commitment to that subordinate, if it does at all? I mean, that's a question. Yeah.
I mean, that's go ahead.
Yeah. And I'll say for me, it's easy, because guess what? I got 9 other subordinates who are looking for that attention. Right. And so we've talked about this before, Joe. You get a whole room full of people that all want a promotion, an award, some kind of recognition, but 1 or 2 are working for it. Right. Yeah. And the other group is like, I just want it because it's something that's out there that should be available to me. But you got those one or two that really are, the cream rises to the top, right? Is that right? The cream of the crop rises to the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
House of Pain or something. I don't know.
It works now.
We got what you mean.
But if you gotta show that commitment to the team, to the organization, to whoever, if you expect that in return. And I don't know what it's like now. I haven't been in almost 5 years, but I know there were challenges that I had with some of my troops that they expected to come in, running the show. And, they just graduated from tech school. They wanted their own office with a window and all those great things. And it's like, well, you got to work through it. You got to work your way up.
Yeah.
Well, I think you need to look at it from the standpoint of, when we talk about commitment, is do they want for themselves the same thing that I want for them?
Mm-hmm.
Because they may not. I may be wanting them to have a different level of commitment for something that I want for them, when that's not what they want for themselves at this moment in their life. And so you have to take that in consideration.
Sure.
Right? Like some people will question why somebody doesn't want to get promoted, or why somebody doesn't want to go on this assignment, and you name the situation. And one, if I don't know what's happening in their life right now, it's very difficult for me to say, I don't understand why you don't want this. This is good for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to step back and look at that every once in a while too. And so, but if they tell me, hey, I'm committed, this is what I want, then that's a whole different answer. Right. Then you have to figure out, okay, well, you say you want it, but why aren't you willing to work for it?
Right. Do you really want it?
My kids are older now, but when my son was playing youth basketball, football, all that stuff, right? Just because you're athletic doesn't mean you get to be a starter on the team.
Mm-hmm.
You got to work for it, right? And I used to tell him when he was coming up in high school and playing baseball, I'd go into his room, and then he's a great kid, right? But I would, I'm typical dad, right? Walk into his room while he's sitting on his bed, playing on his phone. I said, hey, you know what your competition's doing right now? Mm-hmm. They're working to take your spot, right? You either want it or you don't, right? And then typically after saying that, he'd get up, he'd go out in the garage, and he would do batting practice. Right, hit into the net a couple hundred balls, because it was that constant reminder of, hey, this is what you said you wanted, and so now I'm reminding you that this is what you want. It's not what I want; it's what you want. All right, and so just a couple different scenarios where the answer may be a little bit different in how you handle that situation.
Yeah, and I could say I know I've made mistakes trying to give airmen what I wanted them to have.
Right.
I had one guy when I was at Travis, that I was trying to get him pumped up. He didn't have his CCAF, and I was trying to really push him to get his CCAF. And there was a CCAF ceremony, and I said, hey, I'm going to need you to be the guy on stage handing the awards and all that stuff. No, it was an award ceremony. And I thought, maybe if he saw that and he got that experience and that exposure, he would kind of get excited about it. And so afterwards, hey, how'd it go? What'd you think? And he's like, worst experience of my life. Why'd you give that to me?
Right.
And I'm like, why not? You need to be up front. And he was like, no, I don't want that. I just want to come do my job, go home, hang out with my kids. I said, okay, all right. My bad. Bad on Sergeant Green. It was a huge mistake. So I think that's important. Like you said, Derek, it's important to know what they want and know what they want to be committed to, instead of just trying to force what you want on other people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's also like we got to be honest with ourselves. Sometimes, we will have that challenging person, and and it does impact my motivation a little bit. And I just got to spin it back around, right? Like when this person's saying that they want something and they're not working towards it. And it takes a lot of humility also to realize that maybe you're not that leader that's going to be able to motivate that person. It might be somebody else. Maybe I got to call Frank, like, hey, Frank, can you have a talk with, maybe they relate to you a little bit more, and a lot of people are afraid to do that.
Yeah. So you talked about PME, you talked about being an ALS instructor. Was there a time in your career where you thought, okay, this is it for me. I'm going, full on. I'm 100% committed to the Air Force. This is going to be a lifestyle for me. Did you have one of those particular assignments?
So you talk about, I always hear people say, when did you join the Air Force, right?
Yeah.
You came in 1994, but when did you join?
Yeah.
And so I got a story for everything. right? And so I'm just a story.
As a good chief will.
Situation, right? And so I'll be honest, I was getting out of the Air Force about 4 different times in my career. And so I came in, was going to do 4, and then, you know, they said, hey, do you want to re-enlist? And I'm like, I got nothing else going on, so I may as well re-enlist. And then I'd been in 8, and I had applied for a position in the Illinois Guard. You know, my father-in-law was in the Guard. My brother-in-law was in the Guard unit there, and so I applied. I was going to go back home. At that point, I was missing the springs and the 4 seasons, the fall and all that in Illinois, and so I wanted to go back to Illinois and had applied and was in communication with the recruiter over there, and just couldn't pull the trigger to separate at that time. And so then, you know, re-enlisted again, 12 years, and then, you know, at that point, okay, I'm going to stay till 20, right? 20 years and I'm done. And went to Korea, was non-vol to Kunsan, right? Ended up being a fantastic assignment. I love the Wolf Pack. It's a great place to be stationed. But that was probably 17, 18 years. And was over there, and I made chief, and then came back to Scott, did a follow-on back to Scott, and thought, okay, I'm gonna wear chief 3 years, and then I'm gonna be done, right? And so my point in sharing that is, I will tell you, I was always committed to doing the best for the Air Force that I could. But if I ever was at a point where I would have walked away, I would have been okay with my performance at that point. But I never did. And so when I really say I joined the Air Force, it was probably at that point when I became the chief. And that may sound, bad to some, but the point is I was going to do 20 years and move on to something else.
Yeah.
Right. And so made chief, and then went to the staff at AMC and had the opportunity to go be the MSG superintendent at Scott, and then had the opportunity to go to school in Alabama, and then had the opportunity to be a command chief at the first fighter wing at Langley. And so my point is really, when was I all in the Air Force? Probably 5 years ago, right? Wow. All in till 30. And so when I say that, it's not that I was ever, I'm going to get out and go do something else. I may have had those thoughts, but it was always the atmosphere and the culture and the environment of the Air Force that kept me in and kept me motivated to do the best that I possibly could. And so if you were to ask me, 20 years ago, how long are you going to serve? I probably would have said the same thing I'll say today until I'm not, making an impact anymore. Yeah. And there were times where 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, right? When you re-enlisted, where it just became, I'm staying because I'm concerned about stepping out and doing something different. Even though I know in my mind, part of that was the fear that you have is the culture and the family lifestyle that the Air Force provides. It's not the same, may not be the same on the outside world. When you've been retired for 5 years, I mean, what do you miss the most about the Air Force?
I tell you what, I found myself, I'm in a great position now where my boss is retired Navy. And so we kind of connect now. And it's funny because like during a lot of meetings, he's like deferring to me for things because we understand each other. But I tell you what, there's that recognition of a team kind of mindset, because since I've been out, I work with a great team now, but I've worked in departments and organizations where it was every man for himself. Right. Their objective was to come in, do the job, go home. And they weren't invested in the overall mission of the organization. And so what I miss about the military in that environment is that culture of, wingmanship. And I know sometimes it gets tossed around like it's cliche, but I mean, I wouldn't be friends with Frank and Joe and a lot of other people and going on 5 years retired, still staying in touch, doing what we're doing now, if that wasn't important. Right. And what I've seen is those lessons learned in the military, man, if civilian world would just adopt some of those things, like deliberate development, like the wingman concept, if they would just adopt some of those things, how more productive and efficient organizations can run. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say 0530 PT.
I was going to say, and I'm all about that too.
Yeah.
I'm all about that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that makes an interesting point too, because we were talking about like when you know where you're in, but I think sometimes people don't realize when they should be done, right? They're hanging around a little bit
I knew
longer.
when I was done.
Right. Oh, we knew when you were done. Like, but it was funny because it sounds like he's a terrible example of this, but I remember listening to Brett Favre talk about when he thought he was ready to retire, and right, and how many times did he retire and come back? I don't even know.
Yeah.
But he talked about how he knew that he'd be done when it wasn't when he was tired of the game, because he knew he would never be tired of the game. Like, none of us would. We're never going to be tired of coming to work and being with our airmen and, doing all that stuff. But he said it was when he was tired of and started to set a bad example by not coming up to practice, not carrying his pads, not wanting to recover and not do all those, ancillary things. And I think that's when we probably got to look at it too. Is like, when I'm tired of mock PT tests to the point where I'm just like, where I'm a bad example now, or the administrivia we got to deal with. And I'm just not, because I'm never going to be tired of spending time with airmen and executing mission. I don't think I ever will.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's when all the other things kind of weigh you down. At that point, you need to say, I'm not making as big of an impact as I could. Yeah. And it's time to move on and let somebody else make that impact. Brett Favre played about 3 seasons too long.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's why it's funny. It's like it's ironic that he was the one that said that, but he almost like, he went against what he said. So, but that's pretty cool. So
you guys,
go ahead. Z.
You guys might not be have the freedom to do this, but since I'm a senior, I have a note email day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's my day to step away from the administrivia. And just go talk to airmen, and that gets me back in the saddle every time.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm sure I've seen Derek do it too. Like I typically block off time for out and abouts to go do that, and sometimes it's a deliberate approach to it, like going to do that, and I know that I'm making a decision to probably knock out some stuff Saturday morning, right? Because I just know that but I'd rather go do that while the airmen are around and maybe knock out a couple admin things. When, by the way, I can knock out like way more in the 1 hour on a Saturday morning than I could like 5 hours, when everybody's walking into office for sure.
Yeah. Well, I remember it was probably like a year before I retired. Or actually, no, it's probably like right before I pushed the button, and I was at I think it was a squadron meeting, group meeting, and they were talking about having, I guess Travis was trying to save some budget money or whatever and get some, instead of having like a contract to come out and mow and weed the fence line, to get like airmen out there, or get volunteers to come out and do it like on 2 or 3 days a week or something like that. And I said, cool, sign me up. That would be great to get out there. And the other senior NCOs like looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, yeah, it's a good chance. We get up in the morning, go out there, the weather's nice. We can chat with the airmen. We can pick up some weeds, pull some weeds, and a couple of people were like, are you signing up for that? I said, yeah, why not? They're like, well, we're busy. We have meetings. I go, we don't have meetings at 6:30 in the morning. Well, but it's going to take us time to get back from the meeting. I go, when we volunteer for this, it's like once a month. It's not that big of a deal. And they're like, well, if you do it, they're going to expect all of us to do it too, because senior NCOs. And I'm like, but no, I was just, it was just one of those things where I'm like, we getting around those people. It reminds you of why you joined in the first place.
Right.
And I could tell you, for me, my first few years, there was no professional development. We didn't have, we had like criminals as our mentors, so in a lot of ways it was, and so it was one of those things where if I could tell these airmen, the right way, the wrong way to things to be focused on, that's what I wanted to do. And so when I became a FTAC NCOIC and then a career advisor, man, that was the dream job. I was all in. I got to be around them all the time,
Yeah. That's funny. I remember that time when that contract, because I was here in CE when that contract happened. And I think it had to do with the money. We didn't have any money, and we couldn't. It was the same time where we had no money because either the government shut down or something weird happened. Yeah. And when the contract was supposed to be renewed at the same time, so we were all out there picking weeds.
Break out the screwdriver.
That was some good times, man. Good times.
It's a great time to spend with your airmen, though. Honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Get out there before the day starts and spend a little bit of time with them. Nope.
Yeah.
And we all know they value that.
That's absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, Derek, I got a question for you. So I mean, the biggest organization I've been just privileged enough to serve as a leader in has been probably about 500 to 600 people. And now you got like this gigantic, just battleship, right? that you're trying to influence. What are some of the things that might have even some of the challenges that you faced, and maybe even some things that might have surprised you when you took on something? Because this is your second, right, command chief gig. So what are some of those things that just, that really just drove you wow, this is a challenge. This is something that's very difficult that you might not have expected to be?
So I think, my first wing was the first fighter wing, and it was about 1,400 folks, right? And so, it was it was maintenance and ops, great wing to be a part of. But with that wing, and that amount of people, and putting the out and abouts on my calendar as I did, there were days where I had half of a day blocked to go hang out and launch jets all afternoon with maintainers, right?
That's
or I
cool.
would go to sit in the tower for a couple hours with an earpiece in and listen to the afternoon launch of F-22s. I didn't have all of the base support stuff. And so a lot of the meetings that I have now, I didn't attend because my boss, as the wing commander of the first, we had the 633rd wing commander that handled all of the, that colonel owned the installation. And so when I came here, the amount of meetings that I absorbed, right, that was a shock to me. And the fact that I could, I knew a lot more about individuals at the first fighter wing than I do here, because when I went to, our OG there was 240 people. And so when I went to Intel, the shop of 40, I mean, I could, and I was there for a year. And so I would go every month. I would probably hit a squadron, right, once a month at least. And so you got to spend time, multiple, sessions with the same individuals, right, or the same group of individuals. And so you knew a lot more about them as individuals, right, them as people, versus, here where there's so many people. It's, I'll talk to folks and I'm like, hey, how long you been here? And they're like, oh, I've been here 9 years. And I've been here almost 2 years. Right. And I'm thinking, okay, I probably should have seen you or coined you for, before now. Right. But it's so massive that it makes it challenging. And the amount of time that I have to get out and about is a lot less. And to Frank's point just a minute ago, right, the no emails is a great way to do it. And Joe said he blocks his calendar, and I do that same thing, because you have to be deliberate about that if you want to get out and go spend time with folks. Because if you don't, you quickly realize it's now 5:30 and you haven't seen anybody but your email inbox. So those couple things were the biggest surprises, right? I don't want to say challenges, because they're not necessarily challenges, but those were the biggest surprises. And so I valued my time at the first before I came out here, because coming out here to this big wing, I had a little bit of time as a command chief. And so I had a little bit of experience before I moved to this wing. And so I wasn't learning how to be a command chief along, within the same time of learning the wing. I was able to do that and understand, okay, this is how I'm going to lead as a command chief when I came out here. And so it definitely was different. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, and I think, because one thing that I learned real quick when I first put on chief was, what you say, you have to be very careful about what comes out of your mouth, right? Because you could even be sarcastic and say something, and it could become, Chief said that, right? Yeah. And it was amazing. One time, I think my engineers at a previous base were saying that they didn't have enough time to do some of the work orders that we had, and I said, hey, or they didn't have enough manpower, and I said, I don't really want to hear any issues with manpower when I walk down the hall and I see we're having a bunch of barbecues, right? Like on Fridays, right? I don't have any issue with barbecues. I'm just saying that, I don't want you complaining about how you don't have enough time to get work done if we're having barbecues on duty hours, right? And then that turned into Chief hates barbecues. Right.
Yeah.
So then next thing you know, I see people with black bags like carrying on. I was like, what's in there? They're like, oh, nothing. I'm like, what's in there? And it's like, oh, we're having a barbecue this afternoon. I was like, why are you hiding it? They're like, we heard that you really don't like barbecues.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. A buddy of mine in maintenance said that. He said, hey, you guys need some more knives. Next thing you know, they ordered 300 knives the next day. He was like, why'd you order 300 knives? Like, Chief said they needed some more knives. It's like, yeah, so.
Well, and that's a very, very good point. And a mentor of mine shared that when I first became a chief. He said, the best advice I can give you is to listen first and speak last.
Right.
Because when you speak first, and you're trying to solve a problem, the team that's around your table, if you say an idea, that's going to be the idea that they implement.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't listen to their ideas. And so when you sit down, say, here's the dilemma, here's the challenge, here's what I want to get after. Now let's figure out how we can do it. And then you sit back and listen to the team formulating ideas. Because even though you may already know how you want it solved, and I think it was at the command chief course that I went to, or it was the AMC chief course when I first made chief, but they said a chief's whisper is a shout to people. Right. And so you absolutely have to be careful on what you say, because they will take it and they will run with it, even though that's not necessarily what you meant. You don't hate barbecues. You were just making a point of tell me you need more people when you take the 6 that are manning the barbecue grill right now.
Yeah, right. Right. For
Yeah.
sure.
Things that you say turn into a tasker.
Right.
Because, and that's inadvertently.
Right.
And even though you didn't mean it that way, you have anxious followers that are just trying to like fulfill your intent and get after it. It's just, you be careful what you say.
Absolutely.
For sure. And I think a lot of us are probably even dealing with it at the various levels of leadership, whether we're in or not. Like there's times where you have to deal with these problems, and the higher you go onto in the hierarchy of whatever your organization's in, those problems become a lot more complex. Like there's no more easy answer. I was at the USAFE command chief summit, and I remember Juan Lewis was there, and he had brought something up, and thank goodness he's looking healthy again right now. But he brought up, he was like, you know how Juan is, he'll just go off, right? And he said I don't know, I always hear people say, don't bring me a problem unless you bring me a solution. And he was like, I get what people are trying to say, but that sounds like the dumbest thing ever. Why would you bring me the problem if you already have a solution? And he was like, I get the intent of it, right? But I mean, like, but by the time it becomes, our problem, as a leader, they've already tried to work on it, right? And a lot of times the answer to that problem is either bad or worse, right? You're like trying to figure out what the least bad answer to it. A lot of times it's that complex.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Derek, what's something that gets you, I guess, keeps you motivated after 20 plus years in the service, that keeps you coming back every day?
So really my two big motivators are the individuals that you get the opportunity to serve with every single day, right? And spending time with those folks and watching individuals achieve their goals, whatever that is. I mean, that's, and we all know that, right? That's what motivates you, but also my family.
Yeah.
We've talked in the past about, retiring. And so my daughter is a senior in high school this year, and this is her 3rd high school. And so she's had, same challenges that a lot of military kids have. And I've always said is, if you guys say you're done, then I'll be done, because at the end of my career, the 3 most important people will be sitting in the front row, and that's my wife and 2 kids. And that's what success looks like for me, not what's on your sleeve or on your chest as far as rank goes, but that's how I define success. But the motivation piece is not, they motivate me, and then just having the opportunity to spend time with folks, right, and learn from great leaders in our Air Force, regardless of what level they're at, right? I mean, I learned from chiefs, but I learned from airmen too, right? We learned from civilians, we learned from everybody, and it's just, that's the best part to me about what I get to do every single day, is sit and and talk with folks and learn about who they are as people and why they serve and what their goals and aspirations are. And that to me puts a smile on my face. And when I come home at the end of the day, you know what, I'm motivated and I'm ready to put that uniform on and get after it again tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet it's pretty rewarding when you know, at the end of the day, there's some really great people in the military, and especially in the Air Force. I mean, there's some, I remember being at Scott, right? And as the CAA, and you got Transcom there, SCDC there. I don't know how many other commands are at that base, right? So many, and you learn so much, but at the end of the day, you learn how dedicated and committed people are and how smart they are. And it's motivating to go back out and do a good job on their behalf, because you can see just that hope and that incredible just fortitude that a lot of people have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Hey Derek, you know, I know you said when you first came in, you said you wanted to be a Marine. Have you then since been able to work with Marines and check out their culture?
So the only opportunity I had to work with the Marines was when I was on a 365 in Afghanistan, and I worked at a logistics facility in Kabul, and I had a joint team where I had there was 2 Air Force, and then the rest were Army, Navy, and I had one Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And that was and he ran the warehouse down at the bottom of the hill, and it was just I would sit and talk with him for hours after work. He had some of the best stories. I was in E7, he was in E5, I think. And he just had some of the best stories. That's been my only experience, but it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, Frank,
do what?
Yeah, Frank, you went to their senior NCO Academy, right?
I did. Yeah, that was because you know I was always curious about other services. I just felt like Air Force was the best service for me at that time. And so then when the opportunity came when I was at Travis to go to a sister service, senior NCO Academy, you know, I got accepted to go to the one in Kaplan, June.
That's awesome.
And I was maybe 10 or 12 Air Force guys out of 80 or 90 in the student body. And it was an amazing experience. Those shout out to the Devil Dogs, man. Those guys are hardcore, different culture for sure. Like we were doing QC, right? As senior NCOs.
Yeah.
I think it's called QC.
CQ?
No, CQ. Yeah. And I'm like, why are we doing CQ? They're like, in case something happens. I'm like, so we're standing here at sitting here with a green book, you know, those traditional military green books, signing in everybody. They're like, yeah, just in case, you know, people get into a fight. I'm like, what are we gonna do? Why we're not armed, but I think Air Force used to do it a long time ago, but Marines just kind of kept CQ. They still do it to this day, I believe.
Deterrence.
You get the referee. Yeah.
Those all deterrents.
That's play-by-play.
That's funny. Like what you're saying about like that guy had the best stories. I think in the engineer community, we consider those our water and fuel systems maintenance guys, our plumbers. They always have the best story. When we're in a room, suddenly the plumber in the room is going to have the most amazing stories about what they've seen or touched or dealt with.
Oh yeah. Well, and he would just share stories about things that he had seen and how supervisors had reacted to it. And the whole time you're just thinking there is no way that would fly in the Air Force, right? It was a different culture. I mean, this was even 12, 15 years ago, you know, so where we're at today was different than where we were at then. But yeah, he had some good ones. I enjoyed talking with him.
I bet. Yeah.
So Derek, our paths crossed, you and I, back at Scott with the whole AFSA thing.
Yep.
What would you say you got most from being a part of an organization like Air Force Surgeons Association?
So for AFSA, I really came up in AFSA as an organization. And so I joined, you know, I did the typical, this was back in the day when every ALS graduate gets a year free membership, right?
Yeah.
And so I joined in that year, and then I think I renewed it after that. And then when I became an ALS instructor at Eielson, had the opportunity to get run for a position right on the council. And so was able to do that. And then that kind of led to other things and other positions. And so for me, it was it was an opportunity to lead outside of your normal organization, right? Leading folks from across the installation and at different ranks. And at Eielson, I was the president of AFSA as a staff sergeant. And so having the opportunity to lead different ranks, because there it was, we're all AFSA members, right? Trying to support the same cause. And so in that opportunity, I learned a ton of leadership. And I think that's really what you get, because, you can lead in your organization, but when you step outside of your organization and you have to lead in something that you're not familiar with, and Scott, you were in AFSA for many years, and so the big thick books. As soon as you become president, they send you the PDF file, and it's about 900 pages, and they tell you, here's how you run a chapter.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm like, why does Zaleski talk me into this? Is what I kept saying.
Yeah.
And Al Lewis, those guys.
Yeah. Why did I volunteer for this? I don't know. But I grew as a leader, and I really stretched myself, because people come to you for the answer, and they're looking for you to lead that organization, and you've got to step up and do it. It's not an EPR goal.
Right.
Yeah. And I think to just kind of add on to that a little bit, it's one of those things that prepares you for future senior NCO and chief roles, is because you are now communicating with people outside of your organization. You're learning what makes other people tick. You're building those networks, so to speak. So when you're a part of an organization like that, because I know sometimes they get looked down upon, because people accuse people who are involved in those as they're just trying to get promoted. But when you learn how to network and how to communicate with people from different organizations, different backgrounds, different environments, that's why I think programs or organizations like AFSA are so important. And like you mentioned, it gives you the opportunity to lead, especially at a younger rank than you would probably in a normal military setting.
Well,
go ahead.
That's a vital point. And I think I always talk to my folks about that. My senior NCO, it's like, hey, don't do it because the book says so. Do it because you understand why the book says so, right? And I'm, like whatever. And I'm talking about the little brown book that we kind of, the enlisted force structure is what kind of guides us. But I'm like, hey, don't just do it as a checklist. Like, why does it say that, right? So, and like to your point, Scott, you get peer leadership skills and a whole bunch of other skills that comes along with it, right? Because you're leading an organization to success, and they have you don't have any real authority over them to have to do what you want them to do, right? And if you're able to guide people like that to something, you have a level of leadership that other people just don't have. And I think it's important that we develop that on the way there. So I think if we explain that a little bit more, and I try to do that with my folks, they kind of get it a little bit better,
Yeah.
Well, when I talk with folks and they're asking about, hey, should I run for this or should I run for that? Do I need to be part of the top 3 council? And my answer is, you can be a part of whatever you want to be a part of.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so what I mean by that is you're learning leadership lessons in that opportunity, right? It doesn't matter to me if it's top 3, if it's AFSA, if it's 5-6, or if you're on the board for your local church,
right?
You're leading in a different capacity than what you do every single day. And so when people ask me, do I need to be on the top 3 council? And my answer is no. As a senior NCO, you need to support the top 3, however you can, whatever that looks like for you in your current life and in your current position. Right. That may mean you volunteer at the bake sale or whatever it is, right? That's supporting the top 3. If you're asking me, do I need to be in a leadership position? My answer to anybody of any rank is always going to be yes, right? You pick the organization that you want to be a part of. Right. It can be a school board. It can be on your church council. It doesn't matter to me, because what you said earlier is they don't have to listen to you. Right. The challenge is getting them to want to listen to you when you're leading your peers. And that's completely different than when you're leading within your organization.
Yeah, 100%. So hey, Derek, we're before we start wrapping this up, I wanted to ask you, because I know you're an avid reader. I've been in your office before and seen some of the great books that you read. What are some that you might often gift or recommend to people?
So there's my favorite book of all time is by Lou Holtz. Okay. And it's titled Wins, Losses, and Lessons. Nice. Right. And so that was when I started reading years ago. That was the first book that I picked up and read probably since high school that wasn't the PDG, right? And so that's a book that I give to folks that may not necessarily be readers, but they're fans of sports. And I do that because if I can get you to read this book because it interests you because you're a football fan, then that may lead to other things that you will want to read, right? And there's a lot of leadership lessons in that book, but you don't realize it because you're reading a book about Lou Holtz coaching, right, through the years at 6 different universities. And so that's one that I give. And the other one that I usually give out is Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman. Okay. And the thing that I like about that book is there's a quote in there that I always like to say when I'm giving that book out, and it depends on who you are as a leader, whether or not I give you that book or another book. But this one here is when it says anybody can run a family business, but it takes someone special to run a business like a family. And so when there's a leader that I really think leads in an organization and treats that organization like family, then that's a book that I give that individual because there's a lot of leadership lessons in that book. And I think that quote right there, and that's on like page 3, but when I read that to me I fell in love with that book because it's absolutely right. This is a family, right? And when I come into an organization, I want to feel like I'm part of that family. Yeah. And then there's a couple others that I give, but those are the 2 that I really think are my probably top 2 books that I like to give out to people.
That's awesome. Yeah. And we'll be sure to add those books onto the show notes. We like to add those on there in case anybody wants to take a look and a peek to go order those too. And we link them on there. So thank you for sharing those. Cause I haven't read either one of those. So I'll be adding those to the infinite list of books I want to read.
Bob Chapman book one day.
That's awesome. So
if it ends up missing off your show,
I know. I know the code. So
come on in, grab it. They're in there.
Cool. But
you got a library card system or anything like that? Like you just check it out.
Yeah. I wish I did.
Where they're at, though.
Yeah. I never know when mine. I was like, I had to go buy another copy of a couple books. I don't know who borrowed it. Yeah, it happens all the time. But it's good for like if they end up getting some out of it, it's worth it.
There you go.
Absolutely.
But so then we're gonna wrap it up because Z's gonna rub in our face that he has a tea time because he actually has the ability to go golf right now, which is pretty cool.
And it's morning there, isn't it? I forgot that.
It is. Oh, yeah. It's about to be 9 a.m.
Yeah.
But it's a lot closer to Monday too. So
right.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
That is true. But so Derek, we really appreciate your time. I think that a lot of people are going to get a lot of great stuff out of this conversation. And I learned a lot, and I just love having a conversation with you all the time. So thank you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate one. I think what you guys are doing is absolutely fantastic. I've listened to everyone that you put out there, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. And so thanks for doing that. Keep it up. Thanks for the opportunity to come hang out with you guys for a little bit. Scott, it's good seeing you.
You too.
Right,
you too.
Seen you in quite a few years, so that's good.
Yeah.
Frank, nice meeting you.
Yeah.
And Joe, always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. So we're gonna have to have you back on, Derek, when you take on your new job to see what new surprises you have when you take on the Chiefs group.
I'm sure there'll be quite a few.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be awesome. But thank you again, and thank you to all of our listeners. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and llamas are out.
All right, later.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Derek.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the show. We'd love for you to connect with us at www.llama-leadership.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/Llama Leadership and also on Instagram at Llama Leaders. And a big thanks to Mike Whitmer for the music. To check out more of this stuff, go to soundcloud.com/Mike-Whitmer. Thanks again. See you on the next episode.